You're listening to the Red Eye Hour.
Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, J.Meeks, and I'm your pilot tonight on the Red Eye Hour. I hope you enjoy your flight. Now, this is the continuation from part 3. So this is part 4, and I'm actually going to tell 2 stories about personal experiences at Witches and Warlocks. So let's get into it. Let's not waste any time. So this is about the mid-90s. And so we're in high school, we're about 16 years old, somewhere around that age. And during the week, we had been talking about, let's go to somewhere spooky, because it was about September, October. I think it was like early mid-October, actually, to be exact. And we wanted to go somewhere spooky because of the season coming up and the holiday. And we're like, okay, well, let's go to Witches and Warlocks. And most people hadn't heard of it. Only a couple of us did, me being one of them. So we all decided that's where we're going to go. So Friday night comes, and we all meet at our friend's house, and there's about 3 cars full of about 3 or 4 people each. So there's about 12 of us total that were going out there. So we start heading out north. We go out on Casement, we hit Barnes Road, we hit Dyer Road, and then we turn off on Cedar Creek Road. And that's the dirt road that will eventually take you to Witches and Warlocks. So we're driving, everybody's excited, we're talking about where we're going. Everybody kind of got hyped up during the week, telling the ghost stories and telling the urban myths and the stories that we've heard of things that's happened when you go out there. So everybody was pretty excited. So we get there and we pull up to the circle driveway with the big tree in the middle that split, like I talked about in part 3. And so we're all kind of standing around looking, and the anticipation was high and the anxiety was a little bit high, about this place. And it's so dark out there, and that's the other creepy thing. And I talked about that in part 3 as well. So some of us had flashlights, but only a couple of us. And you got to remember, this is the days before cell phones. So we didn't have cell phone lights. We didn't have flashlights on our cell phones. So we're just us out there, experiencing it for ourselves. So we go into the cemetery, and some of the people are looking around. Some of the girls are staying together. Some people are off in groups, just looking at the graves, nothing crazy. And a few of us go to the center of the cemetery where that weird wrought iron fence is. That's about, 4 feet by 4 feet, maybe something like that, with the witch and the warlock headstone and their hybrid child offspring, supposedly. So we're looking at it. Of course, a couple of guys, and I won't name names here, thought they would jump inside of it to be cool and to be tough and to show that I'm not scared of this, man. This is all just BS. I didn't think it was a good idea because, like I said in part 3, man, I think one of the reasons the spirits are unsettled is because of young kids doing things like this, like disrespecting and not showing respect when they're out there. So they're looking at it, and they were looking at one of the graves, and because they're so fragile, they cracked it, and it kind of like fell over. Well, this freaked out some of the girls and some of the other people that were watching. They're like, oh my God, like, why'd you even mess with the headstone? And then one of the other guys picks up a chunk of the headstone that fell off, and he throws it to the back of the cemetery as far as he can, and it goes over the fence and into the woods. And I looked at the guy and I said, man, you're an idiot. I wouldn't have done that, man. Like, what if you piss off the spirits? And of course that guy was like, I'm worried about it, man, and all this kind of stuff. So we're in there looking at it, and they jump back out and keep looking around, and then one of the girls screams, oh my God, what in the hell is that? And some people, right when she said that, just started running. Like, they didn't look to see what it was. And to this day, we're not sure what it was. The girl mentioned that she thought it was like kind of like the outline of like a person she thought standing there, almost like a shadow person. And by this time, before she even screamed, oh my God, what is that? Like, we started getting that feeling like we are being watched, which again, in all the urban myth stories, is very common that you get that feeling, that eerie feeling like you're being watched. So she said that, and we just scattered, man. We just started running to the entrance and running back to our vehicles. So the one girl that drove, she gets in her vehicle and packs people in it. The second car, they get in and get their people packed in, and people are driving off, and they didn't have any problems getting their car started, which was good. I'm trying to get into this SUV that one of the guys drove there. I'm not even all the way in. He's already driving, and I'm trying to get in the back seat, and they keep slamming the door, and they're slamming it on my leg. So I'm yelling, "Hey, I'm not all the way in, man. I gotta get my leg in." They're like, "Oh, we're sorry, man." Everybody's just kind of panicking, trying to get out of there. And some people went a couple different directions to get out of there. So we were all going to meet at our friend's house where we met in the beginning. And so that's where we're heading back to. So we're talking about it. We're talking about the crazy stuff. We can't believe that the two guys jumped inside and messed with the headstones and threw the piece of cement from the headstone. We were like, man, that's bad karma. That's bad luck. What if you get cursed? What if you get hexed? Like, not a good move. So we get back to our friend's house, and we're kind of waiting for everybody else. And we're standing around, and we're just talking about it. And the other people end up showing up. The one car, though, with the one girl, they actually never showed up, and I think they just ended up going somewhere else that night. But later that week at school, we talked to them. They're like, "Hey, what happened? We were supposed to meet back at Tony's house, and you never showed up. Like, what happened?" They're like, "Man, we were so freaked out. We left and we went north, like heading to Highway 13." And she goes, "And I'm driving, and all of a sudden my car stalls out. Like, we weren't even very far from the cemetery. It just quits. And you guys were already gone because you'd went the opposite direction." So it's like, we're all sitting in the car. The car is stalled. It won't start. Like, we're freaking out. So finally they get it started, and they take off again. And driving, she says that she almost went off the road into this ravine. Now, she says it felt like there's something like pulling the vehicle that way, but it could have been just the adrenaline and the excitement and driving fast and losing control. Like, it definitely could be debunked, and just that's all that really happened. But they got out of there, and once they got back into town, like, they went and dropped people off, and like, the girls were so scared they went home. So back at our friend's house where we met, we're sitting there, and our one friend's truck that he drove, we're all sitting there talking. All of a sudden we hear this liquid being like spilled on the street, because we're kind of hanging out by the street corner underneath the street light. And we look, and there's antifreeze just pouring out of this guy's truck. And I don't mean a little bit. I mean, it's running down the street, like next to the curb, going into the drain, like that much liquid. And we're like, "Oh man, you must have blew a radiator hose, or you have a hole in your radiator." And we had asked him questions like, "Did you hit anything hard or go any bumps?" He's like, "No, man, we were all driving like pretty normal speeds because we're following each other to get out there. Like, no, man, nothing to cause that." So he pops the hood, gets in the back, gets a rag because he knows the radiator cap's going to be hot to take off. And he opens it, and it's completely full. And we're all sitting around looking at it, like scratching our heads like, man, that should at least, like, even if there's some in it, like, it should be way lower than that, because we're all looking at this gallons of antifreeze on the ground. And we just couldn't figure it out, man. It was the weirdest thing. So he puts the cap back on, and we wait for it to like cool off. And he checks it again, and it's still completely full. So he gets underneath his vehicle with a flashlight, and he's looking at the hoses to see like maybe if one of the hoses has a little, hole in it, or did a clamp come off and, needs a new clamp and hose. Couldn't see anything wrong. We just couldn't figure out how and why this happened. So that guy gets freaked out, and he's like, "Man, I am going home." So he gets in his truck, takes off. So there's only a few of us. The person's house we were at, it was him and his brother, and then myself and one of our other friends, Mike. And so we go inside and we go downstairs, and that's where we usually hung out. There's like a family area. That's where we played video games. There's an extra bathroom down there. And so me and Mike go into the bathroom, and I just like wanted to wash my hands and kind of wash my face off from being out there. And you got to remember, it was a cold, crispy night, slight fog in the air. And it's mid-October, so sometimes in Kansas in mid-October it can already get pretty chilly. So we had like either hoodies on or like jackets. And I remember I put my hands into my pockets, I think to check to make sure like I had my house keys and my car keys. And I pull out like bunches of like patches of dead grass from the cemetery. Like as if I bent down with my hand and like picked up a big old wad of that dead grass out there from Witches and Warlocks and stuffed it in my pockets. But I didn't do that. I had no reason to do that. And nobody was messing with the grass anyway. Now, we were talking about it as we were walking on it. Like I mentioned in part 3, the ground's very mushy and very soft, and it's just a odd feeling. So I'm getting it out of my pockets, like putting it into the trash can of the bathroom. And my friend Mike is doing the same thing, like washing his hands. And then he takes off a ball cap. He was actually wearing a ball cap. And he takes off the ball cap. And there's this big patch of cemetery grass underneath his hat and in his hair everywhere. And he freaks out. He's like, oh my God. And he's like taking his hands and rubbing it through his hair, trying to get it out. And it's falling on the sink and on the floor. And we're putting the clumps into the trash can and we're trying to get it cleaned up. And we're both in there going like, how'd this happen, man? He goes, I was with you the whole time. We were with each other. Not one time did I see you like bend down and pick up a wad of cemetery grass and put it under your hat. Like, why would you do that anyway, you know? So it was just unexplainable, man. And it was really weird, and it really gave us the creeps. So we all kind of reconvene after that, and I head home for the night because we all had curfews at that time. We were still like 16 years old, and I'm sure our curfew was midnight. So we all headed home for the night. The cool thing is, the background, well, it's not really a cool thing. So the other part of the story is the guy with the truck with the antifreeze leaking comes back the next day about 1 p.m. And he's like, man, I still can't figure it out. I'm not low on antifreeze. And as they're standing outside, just Tony and the guy with the truck, none of the rest of us are there, the antifreeze starts pouring out of the truck again because they were talking about witches and warlocks and being out there. And they're looking at it and they're like, what is happening right now? So he pops the hood, does the same thing. It's full. Checks everything. He goes, you know what, man? I'm done talking about this. I can't explain it. I'm getting out of here, and I'll never go back to that cemetery, period. So he takes off. So that week in school, we noticed one of our good friends wasn't there all week. And it was really strange because he usually rides with us in our cars or rides the bus with us, and he wasn't there. And it was weird that he wasn't. So the next week, he came back and we asked him like, hey man, like where you been? Are you okay? You been sick? And he's like, man, I had a really rough week last week. And he was like, and one of the nights that I was in my bedroom, I kind of woke up and I was laying there but had my eyes closed and I had this feeling that something was watching me. And he's like, and as I turned slowly in my bedroom, and it's dark, and all you can really see is like the light from under the door coming from like maybe the living room or something like that. Not much light, very dim. He goes, I see this like thing or this creature or this person, and it's all black, kind of like a shadow person, but it's tall, like 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall, and it's like sitting on the foot of my bed, but like on the corner. And the first thoughts that came to his mind is like, it kind of looked like the Grim Reaper. So he just acted like he was asleep, but he really wasn't. And he was just terrified laying there and just wishing for it to go away. And finally, when morning came, you know, nothing was weird. That presence was gone. That eerie feeling was gone. But that whole scenario was kind of traumatizing to him. And so he just took the rest of the week off to like process it. And he told our friend, he's like, I will never go back out to that place again. So the other backstory that I know about, and there could be some other ones that I don't know about, but one of the kids that rode out with us there had gotten super sick after going to Witches and Warlocks and was hospitalized and was like really sick to where like, man, is he going to make it or not? He did make a full recovery, and after he was out of the hospital and back to school and we kind of touched base with him, He told us that he'll never go to that place again, and he thinks it has something to do with it, even though he can't prove it. He says something was wrong. Something was wrong out there, and something made me sick, and I'll never go back there again. So that kind of winds up the first story of when we were in high school, and about 12 of us went out to Witches and Warlocks. Had some weird, crazy experiences. Nothing really weird happened like at the cemetery, except for the one person thinking they saw something, and us getting that eerie feeling that we are being watched. It was kind of more of the weird things that happened afterwards. So we're going to end there with the first story, and we'll be back here in just a few moments for story number 2. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for flying with the Red Eye Hour.